Chapter 14, The Report. Corey spent most of Sunday fine-tuning his report on prairies. He added notes in the margin that told him which slides to show and when. When he was sure he had it down, he presented a dress rehearsal to Ben and Ellen in the living room. With no projector available, they were forced to hold the slides up to the light from the window and view the small images. Ben and Ellen were impressed. The presentation was articulate, detailed, and interesting. "I'd say you nailed it," Ben said. "You're going to do just fine," Ellen offered. "I think I'm set, just a little nervous. Is it all right if I head down to the Barrens for a while?" "Sure," Ellen said. "Just be home by 6 o'clock." With that, Corey was out the door. Ben picked up the slide tray and started looking at the slides Corey hadn't selected. The tiny images of an active young boy filled most of them, hiding in the tall grasses, standing with outstretched arms on a windy prairie hillside, or asleep under a bur oak. It became clear that this was more than just a collection of prairie slides. It was also a shrine to a child whose father loved him dearly. Ben showed the slides to Ellen. Seeing Corey as a young child helped them fill in some of the years they had not shared with him. In reality, Corey had been with the Rains for only a short while. As much as Ben hated to admit it, Corey was right. Any placement in foster care was temporary. Ben was afraid of how close Corey had become to them. He wondered if it was fair of them to use Corey to fill a painful void in their own lives. Could Ellen deal with Corey's leaving? He knew the answer to the last question and tried desperately to put it out of his mind. Corey spent the rest of the afternoon in the Barrens, filled with the confidence that his report was well done. The warm weather looked like it was here to stay. Harrier hawks were working the fields, and the buds on the shrubs were getting fat. Off in the distance, he could make out the shape of a Chevy Blazer with an antenna sticking out of its roof. He reached into his pocket and took out the broken transmitter number 4. Looking at the resin-covered electronics, he wondered if the problem was just a loose wire. He squeezed the transmitter tightly and immediately heard the sound of brakes locking up on gravel. "Cool," he said out loud as a cloud of dust lifted from the road in the breeze. The car backed up and Corey started running down the trail. "Hey, I got it to work," he shouted as he met the 2 graduate students at their car. "I just squeezed it real hard and now it works." "Hey, Corey," Wendy said. "Are you an electronics whiz, too?" "I don't know the first thing about electronics. I just squeezed it, and I guess now it's fixed." "Not quite," Steve said. "Let me see that piece of junk." Corey handed him the transmitter. Only then did it sink in that he would have to give it back now that it was working. "Listen to this," Steve said, nodding with his head to the receiver in the car. He squeezed the transmitter and the receiver started to click loudly. When he let his grip relax, the clicking stopped. "Just as I thought, it's got a short circuit." He tossed the transmitter back to Corey. "Don't you need this?" "Nope, the replacement is on the way and it would take too long to teach the prairie chickens to squeeze it just right." Corey laughed. "Hey, Corey, Steve and I were thinking, have you ever been to a booming grounds?" "What's that?" "It's where prairie chickens do their courtship display. You'd love it. We sit in a canvas blind while the male prairie chickens put on this awesome show. When a female comes into the area, the place just goes nuts. Sounds like fun." "We signed up for a blind for next Saturday. There's room for 3 if you're interested." "Interested? I'd love to go. What time?" "We need to be in the blind at 4:30 a.m. That way the birds don't freak out when they see us." "That's pretty early," Corey said. "I don't think Ben and Ellen would let me ride my bike when it's dark out." "We thought about that," Steve said. "You could spend Friday night at my house. Wendy will come by at 3:30 to pick us up." "It might work, but I'll have to ask," Corey said. Steve wrote his telephone number on a piece of notebook paper for Corey. The three talked a little longer, and then the car left. Corey squeezed the transmitter once as they were pulling away, and Wendy beeped the horn. The boy and the bike headed home. Corey got on the bus Monday morning knowing it was going to be a good day. It had been a while since he'd felt that way. He'd had good days, he was just never this sure about it. But he stopped being sure when Don got on the bus. "Corey, what the heck were you thinking?" Don sounded mad. "Kim called me and said you were some kind of sicko. Did you really lick her nose?" Corey didn't know what to say. "I tried to kiss her, but I missed," he whispered angrily. "What about the birds? Did you really sit and watch some birds? You know, they were dancing. It's courtship. What's wrong with that?" "Look, I'm sure this will all blow over, so don't worry about it, but this is the kind of thing that gives a kid a reputation, and not a good one. I don't understand. Look, can't you just be like everyone else? Kiss girls on the lips, not the nose, and watch MTV, not some X-rated bird dance?" As Corey approached his locker, he could see a white sheet of paper taped to it. His optimism about the day diminished even farther as he got close enough to see what was written on it in large letters. "Corey Nelson is a nose licker." There was also a crude drawing of a head with an extremely large tongue licking the nose of another large head. Corey tore the sign down and crumpled it tightly in his hand. While digging in his locker, he could feel the eyes of everyone on him. He quickly grabbed his books and headed straight to his first-hour class. As he entered the room, a voice from down the hall shouted, "Hey, crane lover!" Corey sat down and wished he were anywhere else. Don came into the room carrying his books. "Sounds like you really got Kim ticked at you," he said. "Not much I can do about that now. For starters, you could clean up your act, stop hanging out in those woods, and maybe come down to the mall once in a while." Corey didn't respond. "You can't expect to fit in when you keep acting so weird." Corey had never given much thought to fitting in before. He just did what he wanted to do. Math class was uneventful and was over too soon. Corey walked into his science class with his tray of slides and his folder of notes under his arms. "Looks like I'll need to get a slide projector in here. That is, if you're actually planning to go through with it," Mr. Kulex said, sounding annoyed. "I'm ready. Let's get it over with." Mr. Kulex sent a student to the AV office in search of the projector. Minutes later, the principal came in with the projector and a video camera. Mr. Kulex looked resentfully at Mrs. Danos. "You don't mind if I tape this report?" the principal said, as a statement, not a question. "I heard it should be good." Ellen must have called Karen, Corey thought. The next few minutes were a blur. While Mr. Kulex set up the projector and Mrs. Danos adjusted the video camera, Corey stood in front of the room trying not to think of anything. He knew what he had to do. He would give his report exactly as he had rehearsed. He was confident about his material and his father's slides. He looked up. That was a mistake. A kid in the front row lifted a notebook, revealing a page in a way that only Corey could see. Corey saw the pencil drawing of a person dancing with a large bird. The caption said, "True Love." Corey began to perspire. "If you're ready," Mr. Kulex said as Mrs. Danos flashed a hopeful grin. With index cards held firmly in his hand, Corey began. The word prairie comes from the French word prairie, which means grassland or grassy orchard. A prairie is an ecosystem made up mostly of grasses and is a direct result of the climate in which it's found. Prairies are usually found in places that are too dry for forests and too wet for deserts. Because the climate has changed many times over the last 10,000 years, the range of the North American prairie has also changed. During the warmer periods, prairie could be found at much higher latitudes than today. During cooler and wetter periods, trees gradually replaced prairies. Corey briefly thought about the note on his locker and the crude drawing of the crane. His perspiring hands started to shake. 3 major types of prairies can be found in North America: shortgrass, tallgrass, and mixed. Shortgrass prairies are found in the dry rain shadow of the Rockies. This land has been used as a grazing land because the lack of water made it difficult to farm. The tallgrass prairies can be found farther east where there is more rain. Only 1% of the original tallgrass prairie is still around. Most of the tallgrass prairies were plowed for farms and are now cornfields. The lack of trees and the deep soil created the perfect conditions for farming. Mixed prairies are found in the transition zone between the tallgrass and shortgrass prairies. Over 400 million acres of North America was once prairie. It was the largest continual ecosystem in North America. Now, it's broken into small pieces. Today, groups such as the Nature Conservancy have been working to save what remains. 2 major prairie preserves are the Kanza Prairie in Kansas, which is part of the National Science Foundation's long-term ecological research program, and the Tallgrass Prairie Preserve in Oklahoma. Corey dimmed the lights and turned on the projector. The darkened room allowed him to relax a bit. He continued his report, changing slides as he went. The stars of the prairie ecosystem are the grasses. Grasses such as big bluestem, little bluestem, and Indian grass can be found along most roadsides in Adams County. In the summer, needlegrass can be seen, with its peculiar form of seed dispersal. The barbs on the ends of these seeds would latch onto the fur of buffalo, only to drop off a few days later. Corey passed a handful of needlegrass seed around from a bag Wendy had given him. These sharp-pointed seeds needed to be handled gently. The cries of pain began almost at once. He continued his report. Many prairie forbs can be found in central Wisconsin. The pasque flower, Anemone patens, is one of the first flowers to bloom on the prairie. This plant was used to treat boils and sore eyes. The rich colors of the flowers brought faint gasps and smiles from a few students. Similar to crowds watching a fireworks display, they quietly voiced their approval with each new slide. Corey allowed himself to feel good for a brief moment. The next slide was upside down. The word "loser" rang anonymously from the back row. He gave passing thought to running out of the room, but decided to continue. The lupine, Lupinus perennis, comes into bloom in May and is critically important to the life cycle of the Karner blue butterfly. If the lupine is eliminated, the Karner blue can't survive. Puccoon, Lithospermum canescens, blooms in May and is common on roadsides in central Wisconsin. Some Native American tribes used the white seeds of the plant as sacred beads. Bird's foot violet, Viola pedita, blooms in spring and then seems to disappear. This was a source of vitamin C and also used to treat diarrhea. In midsummer, butterfly weed, Asclepias tuberosa, is the easiest plant to spot. Its bright orange flowers are an important feeding station for butterflies, and its deep taproot helps it to survive during times of drought. Prairies are more than just plants. Many animals also call the prairie home. Buffalo were an integral part of the prairie ecosystem. Everything about this animal helps it to survive in a prairie. It can go without water for a long time, its herding behavior helps to protect it from predators, and its teeth allow it to eat the abundant grasses. Around the year 1500, buffalo could be found in central Wisconsin, although this was the edge of their range. The advance of the railroad was the beginning of the end for the buffalo. Market hunters used trains to carry buffalo meat to the restaurants in the east. In 1800, there were 30 million buffalo in North America. By 1870, there were 20 million, and in 1889, there were only 1,000 animals left. The Plains Indians, whose survival depended on the buffalo, suffered greatly from their demise. Efforts to reverse this trend have started to bring the buffalo back. By 1950, there were 25,000, and in 1994, there were 200,000. There are no free-roaming buffalo in Wisconsin today, but there still are many prairie animals in our area. These include the white-tailed deer, coyote, red fox, striped skunk, meadow vole, northern harrier, sandhill crane, upland sandpiper, bluebirds, and hundreds of insects. A prairie ecosystem is incredibly diverse. A prairie without fire will not stay a prairie long. Fire keeps prairies from turning into forests. 200 years ago, wildfires were common in Adams County, and as a result, so were prairies. But as modern forest management and fire control gave us the pulp for paper and a safe place to live, they also began the slow process of changing an ecosystem. Animals that were dependent on the open grasslands could not compete in a wooded environment. The prairie remnants in central Wisconsin are the last remaining part of what was a vast area of prairie and pine barrens. Many of the plants found here are rare. A few are endangered. Animals such as the prairie chicken and the Carner blue butterfly depend on the prairie ecosystem for their survival. A valuable and unique resource is in danger of being lost forever. In addition to saving prairie remnants, locally collected seeds could and should be replanted to establish new prairies. This is the process of restoration. Restorations take a great deal of work, but the end result can be a thing of beauty. People who understand ecosystems are more likely to value them. How can we ask people to save a rainforest far away if we can't save an endangered community in our own backyard? If we work directly to protect and raise awareness about this endangered ecosystem, years from now, we will be able to return to see the results of our efforts. I'd like to end with a quote from Aldo Leopold. "To keep every cog and wheel is the first precaution of intelligent tinkering." Corey looked up at his audience. Mr. Kulex was writing on a slip of paper, and Mrs. Danos was grinning. The students, all of whom by now had heard Kim's version of the ill-fated date, sat silent. It was as if Corey had just broken the first commandment of JFK Junior High School. Thou shalt not do more than absolutely necessary. Corey knew he had set things straight with Mr. Kulex. He also knew that he'd just made himself even more of an outcast with his classmates. "Nice work, Corey," Mrs. Danos said as she left with the video camera. Mr. Kulex handed Corey a slip of paper without saying a word. It read, "Corey, nice work. Your research was very complete, and it is clear you understand what you are talking about. In the future, you will need to slow down and try to look at your audience a little more. You will receive an A on this report. At this point, I will consider you caught up for the quarter. Please try not to get behind again. Mr. Kulex." It wasn't the apology that Corey had been hoping for, but he would take what he could get. He folded the note and put it in his pocket. The class period ended with yet another worksheet. As the students filed out, no one said a word to Corey. In fact, no one said much to him all day. He even ate lunch alone. Don said he had something to do and ate with the more popular kids. Having Don desert him hurt the most. It made him feel even more isolated, more unwelcome, and more alone. In PE, students doubled up in lockers in other rows rather than use a locker near Corey. On the ride home, Don sat in the back of the bus until just before his stop, when he moved forward to Corey's seat and sat down. "Man, have you got people talking about you?" "Yeah, I know. I was there, remember? That was quite a report you gave today." "I'll go out on a limb and guess that the report didn't help things here. I'd say now they're calling you Professor Crane Lover." Corey sat back in his seat. "Hey, relax. This is all going to blow over. Things will be back to normal soon." "Does that mean you'll sit with me at lunch again?" "Oh, that. Sorry. I was being a jerk." The bus stopped and Don got off. Corey stared out the window as the bus pulled away and a cold spring rain started to fall. It was looking as if he might have to choose between friends and the Barrens. Fitting in with the kids at school might help him to feel normal again. Being in the Barrens made him feel whole. Unfortunately, it didn't seem as if he could have both. 2 miles from home, the bus passed a Chevy Blazer that was parked alongside the road. It was hard to miss the large antenna sticking out the roof. Corey didn't feel quite so alone. He would have to remember to ask if he could stay at Steve's house Friday night. "How did it go?" Ellen asked as he walked in the door. "I think I nailed it," Corey said. His false tone of excitement masked the stress he was feeling. "Too bad you couldn't have seen it." "I wanted to wait until you and Ben were home," she said as she put the principal's videotape down on the table. Corey just shook his head and laughed. "All I can say is, I'm glad you're on my team." "I am, and don't you ever forget that." She gave him a gentle hug and said, "Take your things to your room. Before you ask, I don't want you riding down to the Barrens in the rain. That place will survive without you for a day." After supper, the three sat in the living room and watched the video of the report. The sound quality was poor and the slides didn't show up well, but Ben and Ellen were proud of the performance. Corey, on the other hand, hated to see himself on videotape. He did look like a nerd. It was no wonder the kids picked on him so much. "Nice work, bud," Ben said. "What did Mr. Kulex have to say about it?" When Corey showed him the note, he observed, "Well, could be worse. At least you won't have any more problems at school." Corey didn't want to explain that his problems at school were only just beginning. "I ran into those 2 grad students again yesterday." "The ones with the TV antenna in their car?" Ellen asked. "Yeah, they're really cool. They were telling me about the prairie chicken booming grounds." "I've heard of that," Ben said. "It was on that show on PBS." "They want me to go sit in a blind with them next Saturday morning," Corey said, adding, "It would be really early." Ellen's mother, Riederer, was alerted. "How early?" "We need to be in the blind by 4:30. "In the morning?" Ben exclaimed. "If you get there any later, you scare away the birds." "You'll never get up that early," Ellen said. "That's why Steve asked if I could stay at his place Friday night." Corey had been living with them for less than 2 weeks, and Ellen was not about to let him spend the night at some college student's house, especially a student she didn't know. Ellen had spent 2 years in college and knew too well what that could be like. Ben understood what Ellen was thinking by the look on her face. He also knew that Corey needed to have opportunities like this and that they would have to find a way to make it work. It only took a quick look, just a few seconds of silent eye contact, to reach a compromise. After 25 years of marriage, words weren't always necessary. Ellen explained a counteroffer. "We can't let you spend the night at some college student's house. We haven't met the boy and don't know a thing about him." Corey looked disappointed. "However, if you can live with some minor changes in your plan, I think we can get you out to that blind." Corey sat up and listened intensely. Corey was sure that Steve and Wendy would laugh at him. Many people had lately, but he'd ask anyway. He dialed the number and asked for Steve. "Just a minute," was the reply. He could hear the shouts of, "Hey, Steve, it's for you." "Hello?" "Steve, this is Corey Nelson from the Barrens." "Hi, Guy, how you doing?" "Okay, my foster parents won't let me stay at your house on Friday. They say I'm too young." "I was afraid of that." "But Ellen did say that you guys could stay here. She said it's closer and she'd even make breakfast. I know it sounds dweeby and I'll understand if you don't want to, but it's the only way Sounds great!" "What?" "Look, I haven't had a meal that didn't come out of a microwave in months. Is Ellen a good cook?" "She's a great cook, except for her meatloaf." Steve laughed. "Wendy and I will be there around 8. "Shouldn't you check it out with Wendy?" "I've seen the stuff she eats. She'll be there." "Cool. Take care, kid. See you Friday night."